I think too it goes into that area that I've been playing around with a lot of, is in not making evaluation a tacked on experience, that you're not always tacking it on at the end. And that comes from my work in assessment in schools, is that we tend to do the teaching and then we tack on the testing at the end. And actually, if you look at the more embedded assessment approach, it's that at all points we should be stopping and saying, both learners and teachers should be stopping and saying, how are we doing? What's going on? How's it going on? And so it's that meta-thinking process that we were talking about earlier. And so I've been working on how do you embed evaluation into the experience where people see it as part of the program. And that means that's things like well-crafted response areas. So just having a response book and having people say, write down your stuff, can be interesting, and you can get some great quotes for grants and materials, but it's not evaluative. So a response board, you have to think about what's the prompt and how am I going to get them to respond to it. And it might be that they have some choices, or they're able to reconstitute their experience by playing with some things on a magnet board. It feels like an activity, but it's data that you can work with. So any way we can embed it so it's not this tacked on survey at the end, for me, is just more interesting, because we're so over-surveyed now with the internet, with all of the online survey equipment. Every time you turn around, somebody's just hitting you with a link, and it's harder and harder to get people to respond. So I think we have to get a little more creative and a little more thoughtful about how we get the data.
So if you're embedding something, say you're doing a program that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, would you have a moment where you would send somebody or a group of people over to the response board? So it would literally be within
part
your
of
program.
the activity.
Okay, you just did
Right.
this first section
Right.
response board, and then we'll move on to the second session. So it's literally that embedded into the program.
I think yes, it can be that. They won't see it as something separate. They're just talking about reviewing. I thought about this when you watch in like preschool. Teachers are always saying to the kids, and what did we just do? And asking the kids to track back and say, oh, we took the blue one first and the yellow one second. And that's a teaching strategy that preschool teachers, early childhood, know very well. And then we stop doing it, and we wonder why kids and people aren't very reflective. And it's that we need to pause and stop and think, well, what did we just do? And what does that mean for now this next task that we want to do? And that's, for me, evaluation. Because in teaching, school teaching, you always want to say, did they get what I wanted them to get? And if I wait till the very end, it's too late. So I have to kind of process through.
Do you also determine the type of evaluation or the evaluative tool based on what they're doing in the program? Is it that connected?
It's that, and it's also what you want to know and what you want to do with it. But definitely, it's a great point, because often people will say, I want to do a survey, or I want to do a focus group. And it's like, well, wait, tell me what it is you want to know, why you want to do it, and what is the experience? So, for example, I feel like the instrument should be more in alignment with the experience. If you're having all this fun and you're playing and you're having this great time and families are engaging together and they're being creative and getting into their sensory experiences, and then I slap a survey in front of one of the adults, it's kind of like dragging that needle across the record. You know, it's got that scrapey feeling to it, and it's jolting, it's moving them up and out of the experience you just tried so hard to create. And so if I can find some way that is in keeping, is in alignment with the experience, because we are a leisure learning experience, a free choice learning experience. It's not school, and so to like flip up something that looks like a test, all these things look like exams. I will resist that with everything I have. Sometimes you have to do it. I just think we can be a little more creative and back off and think about it differently. And then the last thing is that we can do it more creatively if we're willing to ask less. A lot of times what happens with when you're getting a survey or question is we keep, especially a survey, we keep adding a question. Well, we can ask this and we can ask this and we can ask this. And I would say no, ask 2 questions, 3 questions. Then you can do that in a response area or places where people put chips in and vote for something or add sticky notes to certain areas on a wall. You can still get these choices and ratings and numbers, but you don't have to go the way of the written survey. I would say think of that last. When all else fails, then perhaps. I mean, I think asking them to think about that continuum is really hard. That may be why you're not getting the responses you want, because it's just, part of me is like, oh, I'm on holiday. I'm not sure I want to crank my brain up to that level. So you have to be, consider what they're willing to give you at that point. And that may be too hard. Again, may have seemed like a good idea a couple of months ago, and it's not playing out. But you could have voting tubes, clear plastic tubes, and here's the question, and here are my choices, and they drop a color chip or something into them, and it's something the family can decide, and where do we want to vote, or everybody in the family gets a vote, and so you start to see these growing bar charts, right? I mean, they're just already right there, and you can count them, of course, if you need to, but it's kind of interactive, but it's fun, and that's kind of embedded. It's part of that reflective process that you want the learners to engage in.